Today, let's focus on the guy that makes all the Commanders' draft picks and signings, the GM, Adam Peters. I want to give an ode to Adam Peters today. What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. It is June 25th. Commanders training camp is vastly approaching. Today, we're going to talk about the GM, Adam Peters. As I said in the intro, before we do that, make sure you hit the like button on this video. Show support at the hype button to reach us out to more people. Subscribe to this channel on the road to 6,000 subscribers. And we're trying to hit that mark before training camp, so I need y'all to subscribe. And as always, your thoughts belong in the comment section below. I love to hear what you guys have to say about these videos and your opinions on what I have to say. As you know, last year, the Commanders were the oldest team in the league. The average age broke the 28-year-old threshold for the Commanders last year, making them the first team in well over a decade to reach that average. Washington entered the 2025 season with 25 players aged at 29 years or older. No other team in the NFL had more than 20 players in that age bracket. In fact, the Green Bay Packers were the youngest initial 53-man roster in the NFL last year, with an average age hovering around 25 years old to 26 years old. And the Commanders were obviously way ahead of that. We were the oldest roster in the NFL last year. Well, there's a man behind that, and that's Adam Peters. And he was fooled like us last year. Now, this is an ode to Adam Peters, so we're going to get into the good stuff that he has done. Trust me. But let's start with the bad. People were coming for his head last season. After we figured out that we were only going to win 4 or 5 games, people were blaming everything on Adam Peters because he assembled this old roster and it did not work out last year. Adam Peters was fooled like us. You and me thought the Commanders were a few games away from a Super Bowl. So the thinking is that you bring in a few guys like Deebo Samuel, who we traded for last year. You trade for him, he can help us get over this hump. You bring in a guy like Dietrich Wise, that veteran leadership. You bring in a guy like Von Miller because you need an edge rusher, and you don't really care about the age. You bring in these older guys thinking that you're a few games away from a championship. How can I get this guy to help us win that championship, win that Super Bowl? How do I bring in a guy that can get us over the hump, right? And the case was the Commanders weren't even close to a Super Bowl. They weren't even close to a Super Bowl. The case was Jaden Daniels and his help of this. He absolutely carried this football team in 2024. He carried us, okay? We did not have a good roster whatsoever. This roster was not close to a Super Bowl whatsoever. And Adam Peters was fooled just like us and brought in a few pieces to try to help this football team, get to a Super Bowl. Adam Peters was fooled like us. He brought in those older guys thinking that we were a few games away from the Super Bowl. He brought back Bobby Wagner, who was slow, who didn't do anything last year, and who at this point the Commanders had no thoughts of bringing back this offseason. They brought back Bobby Wagner. They brought back Zach Ertz, the guy that can't run after the catch, the guy that was a one-year rental. Adam Peters had to realize that Zach Ertz was a one-year rental, and he didn't, and he brought him back for the 2025 season, and it did not work out. Austin Ekeler was already on a deal here. He brought in Javon Kinlaw, who he was kind of taking a bet on, and he's still on this football team right now. He's not old. That was a good signing. You brought back Noah Brown, who Adam Peters should have realized that he was absolutely injury-prone, and he had no right being on this Commanders roster. He was injury-prone, and he looked good in 2024, but he hasn't gone through a full season in the NFL without being hurt at least once. You have to look at the statistics and realize that you should not have signed Noah Brown. You brought in a guy like KJ Osborne, who's not a spring chicken. You brought in Marcus Mariota back, which is a very good move. I like that. But he is old, and he did raise that number of the Commanders' average age. He did raise that. You brought in Eddie Goldman, who hasn't done anything in the league, and who's been a guy that has just really kind of just sat on people's roster, and he's very old. You brought in Cleveland Farrell, who is getting up there in age as well. You brought in a guy like Jacob Martin, who is, and he was worth taking the bet on. He had a good year last year, so I don't mind that move from Adam Peters. You brought in a guy like Michael Gallup, who was literally retired for a year, and you brought in a guy like him, and you thought that he was going to help your roster, where he didn't even make the roster last year. This Commanders GM, Adam Peters, was thinking that we were a few games away from a Super Bowl, and the case was we were not. And I want to make sure this never happens again. And Adam Peters does as well. See, Adam Peters, he kind of saw his mistake, right? This offseason, he saw his mistake. He understood what he did wrong, and that was bringing all these old guys onto the roster, because you can say that injuries really affected us last year, and they really did, but Adam Peters brought in all these old guys, and that's what led to the injuries. The GM led to the injuries because he brought in all these old guys that have had a lot of wear and tear on the NFL bodies. Like, if you look at Austin Eckler, he's 31, right? Like, he's 31, 32, and that's why he got hurt last year, right? You brought in all these old guys with all that wear on their body, and you didn't really think that they were going to get hurt, right? That's why a lot of these guys got hurt last year. Also because the Commanders were just cursed, but Adam Peters brought in all these old guys, and he thought that that would get the Commanders to a Super Bowl, and it did not get us to a Super Bowl. It got us nowhere. It got us 5 wins last year, and it got basically the whole team injured last year. Adam Peters even struggled to give Terry McLaurin his extension. In hindsight, looking back, the offseason saga between McLaurin and Peters really set this team back as a whole in 2025. It really set this team back. It was not good what Adam Peters and Terry McLaurin went through, and Adam Peters even said that I've learned from that, and that's not going to happen again, right? Terry McLaurin even requested a trade because Adam Peters will not give him a contract, which is absolutely crazy in itself. You went old at edge, did Adam Peters. He decided to ignore edge in the draft, and he went with the aging veteran route. The decision came back to haunt him. The 31-year-old Dietrich Wise went down with an injury right away in the 2025 season. And to make matters worse, Washington lost both Dorrance Armstrong and Javonte Jean-Baptiste to season-ending injuries. We were forced to rely on 36-year-old Von Miller, 30-year-old Jacob Martin, and 33-year-old Preston Smith last year. That's how bad it was. And not to mention, Adam Peters gave Matt Gay a massive mistake signing a fully guaranteed $4.25 million contract. Through 10 games, he was 13 of 19 on field goal attempts and just 4 of 9 from 50 and beyond. And he was cut after week 10, and Washington was left on the hook for his entire salary. Also, Marshawn Lattimore. You put so much hope into Marshawn Lattimore. The trade for Marshawn Lattimore was good. We all would have done it at the time, so I can't blame Adam Peters for that. But putting the hope into Marshawn Lattimore last season was absolutely not the right move for Adam Peters and the Washington Commanders. So you guys get the point. He messed up in 2025, and he realizes it. You guys realize it. I realize it. Everyone has realized that Adam Peters has set the Commanders back by his 2025 season. And you can't change the past now. You just have to go on and get this team better. Well, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters have learned from their mistakes. This is why I'm giving an ode to Adam Peters today. Because if you look at what he did in free agency in the draft, he killed it. He crushed it this offseason. Adam Peters signed Odafe Oweh to a 4-year, $96 million contract. Odafe Oweh has shown flashes in the league before, and he's absolutely hitting his prime. He also signed Chigo Okonkwo to a 3-year, $27 million deal. Chigo Okonkwo is a guy that is hitting his prime. You're pairing him with Jaden Daniels, and this is a cheaper deal than what the Giants got Isaiah Likely for, which I really like. You sign Leo Chenal, one of the best linebackers to ever come out of the draft, to a 3-year, $24.75 million contract, which is pretty cheap for what we think he's going to do here. You also signed Tim Settle. Now, this, granted, was one of the older signings this offseason, but it was a 3-year, $23.49 million contract. He returns to Washington. You signed Amik Robertson, who's young, who showed flashes in his NFL career before, to a 2-year, $15.02 million deal. You signed Nick Cross, who was absolutely a really good safety for the Colts last year, and you brought him in. He's also hitting his prime. You brought him in for 2 years, $13 million. Like, that is a cheap contract. You brought Caleb on Chase on into a really smart deal, a 1-year, $11 million contract. And this is a guy that if he balls out this year, you can give him a big contract going forward. You brought back Marcus Mariota. Love that move. You need your primary backup, and that is Marcus Mariota. He was good last year. You brought in Charles Omenihu to a 1-year, $4 million contract. And that's a guy that's bringing over 23 sacks from the Kansas City Chiefs. You brought in Rachaad White on a 1-year, $2 million deal. 1 year, $2 million deal for Rachaad White. Are you kidding? That's been a running back one with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Adam Peters absolutely fleeced the entire NFL for Rachaad White. Absolutely. Van Jefferson, you brought him in. He's been flashing. This whole entire offseason, Van Jefferson has been flashing. You brought him in on a cheap deal. Ahkello Witherspoon. We only have 4 cornerbacks right now. Ahkello Witherspoon was a smart signing, a smart guy to bring in. You brought back Drake Jackson, the former first-round pick. You brought in a guy that you're betting on his upside, which I like that move as well. And he's also young, right? You brought back Treylon Burks. I also love that move, man. I love bringing back Treylon Burks. Kind of the same thing as Drake Jackson. You're betting on that upside of Treylon Burks. There's a common theme with all of these signings that Adam Peters has made this offseason. And that theme is that these are all guys going into their prime. These are all guys going into their prime. Do you know the talent that we have on this roster right now? Can you see the linebacker room? If Frankie Louvu returns to that 2024 form that he was, then that's going to make this team even better. But you have Leo Chenal. You drafted athletic freak Sonny Styles, and that was also by Adam Peters. He drafts the players as well. Leo Chenal, Sonny Styles, Frankie Louvu. Are you kidding me? Look at that linebacker room. The defensive line is back to all first-round picks. Johnny Newton is ready to go, who Adam Peters picked in the second round in 2024. You brought in Rachaad White for that cheap deal, as I mentioned. You drafted Antonio Williams. You brought back De'Ami Brown, who has absolutely flashed this offseason. Adam Peters has killed the offseason. He's made this team a lot better. See, what people don't realize when they're not a Commanders fan is they don't even know. Like, they still think we have Deebo Samuel. No, we don't, because he wasn't good last year. Now, I shouldn't say that. Deebo was solid last year, but he's older. We don't have Bobby Wagner on the team. He's too old. We don't have Zach Ertz on the team. He's too old. Adam Peters messed up in 2025, and he's changing that. He's changing the trajectory of the football team going into 2026. How dare I give an ode to Adam Peters and not even mention the cap space? The Commanders sit comfortably near the top 3 in available spending room near the caps in cap space. Adam Peters has changed this roster, put a lot of talent on this Commanders roster, but we still have we're top 6 in cap space remaining for football teams. He carefully structured previous multi-year deals, and he put backloaded structures on those deals, which means their cap hit is minimized for the current season, and it maintains room for, opportunistic summer additions, future extensions that can be made. And the Commanders have far more financial flexibility than their NFC's rivals, like Philadelphia Eagles, New York Giants, Dallas Cowboys. We have a lot more cap space than them. We have done a lot better on the cap than them, which is all a credit to Adam Peters and what he's done this offseason. I mean, Adam Peters has dominated the cap this offseason. What I told you guys is, I want Adam Peters to spend a lot of money this offseason. If we're still top 5 in cap space, Adam Peters has done something wrong. Well, that's actually not the case at all, because Adam Peters has done everything that I think he should have done, and he literally still has that much cap space remaining. So Adam Peters has done wonders to this football team. He's done wonders to this football team this year. He's set this football team up for success. Now, there's questions. What about the center position? Why'd you let Tyler Biadasz go? What about the wide receiver position? Why haven't you added a Brandon Aiyuk, not Brandon Aiyuk, Stephon Diggs? Why haven't you added one of those guys? There's questions there. I understand that, right? But Adam Peters has dominated the cap this offseason. He's gotten younger, faster, and stronger. He understands what it is. When you watch that presser to close out the season for the Commanders with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, they were disgusted with themselves and what they had done. Well, they're not disgusted anymore. They've changed this roster for the better. One of the other things that I have to absolutely praise Adam Peters for is he's had to say goodbye to tough players. Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner were loved by the Washington Commanders. They were team leaders. They led everyone on the football team. Not so much Marshawn Lattimore, but they did cut Marshawn Lattimore. Adam Peters has not been afraid to rip the Band-Aid off and cut guys. Like, that's $18 million for Marshawn Lattimore. He wasn't afraid to do that. Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner, you didn't feel like you had to re-sign them because of their good characteristics and what they did before in Washington. You didn't feel like you had to do that because they were superstar NFL players. Adam Peters has made the tough decisions, and he's been spectacular. He's been spectacular. He has targeted prime age talent this offseason, as I talked about. Rather than chasing declining players, expensive older players, he focused on acquiring the younger free agents this offseason, which I've talked about. That's going to change everything for this football team. He added these edge rushers that are just going to attack. You added Odafe Away, Calebon Chason, Charles Omenihu. Man, I can't express how much I love those guys, the signings of those guys. You drafted Sonny Styles, the elite defensive playmaker. You helped your defense out even more. You built a deep receiving core. See, this isn't Chris Moore out there anymore. This isn't Michael Gallup out there anymore. This isn't KJ Osborne out here anymore. This is real NFL talent. And if you have to go to them, you don't feel bad. If Van Jefferson has to play in an NFL game for us, you don't feel bad because he's a real NFL wide receiver. Chris Moore is not a real NFL wide receiver. Well, that's what we were dealing with last year. We don't have that anymore. He's built that deep receiving core this year, has Adam Peters. And there's going to be a few tough decisions. There's going to be a few tough decisions on who to cut and who to keep. You've reset the culture. Peters has absolutely stripped away the former reputations. He's prioritized adding these blue-collar players, and he understands that they will fit Durante Jones' system, that they will fit, David Blough's system, but mostly Durante Jones' system. Mostly Durante Jones' system. Like, Adam Peters has focused on adding these guys that attack, on adding these guys that absolutely attack attack on defense. Adam Peters has prioritized that. He tried to trade down in the draft. He tried to trade up in the draft. He tried to do all that, but ultimately none of that came to fruition. So he just went with the best player, and that was Antonio Williams at the time. The Commanders tried to trade down from 71, but they ended up sticking and picking with Antonio Williams. I already talked about Sonny Styles, Antonio Williams. How about Joshua Josephs, a guy that was an absolute steal in the draft? He was not supposed to be there at pick number 147. He was not supposed to be there, but he was there for the Commanders, and they took him. He was the best player on their board by far. They took Katron Allen, the Penn State leading rusher all time. They got him, who people have loved this offseason. He's really been impressing. They got Matt Galbin, who they needed a center, and they got their center. And I feel like adding a center at the 6th round of the draft was perfect because the centers in this draft class were all kind of the same. No matter if you got one from pick number 80 or pick number 207, I believe Matt Galbin was. And then you added a quarterback, Sam Hartman. It's finally time to say goodbye to Sam Hartman. We know that. So you add Ethan Kaliak-Manis. You draft him because you don't feel like you need anything else. So Adam Peters' free agency was to perfection, and Adam Peters' draft was to perfection. Adam Peters has done everything right this offseason. Adam Peters has set this football team up for success. There's nothing left for Adam Peters to do besides maybe add Brandon Aiyuk or maybe add Stephon Diggs. There's nothing else for Adam Peters to do. He's had the perfect offseason. He's done everything that we've asked him to do. We asked him to be aggressive in free agency. Everybody was on his head day one. But he did. He was. He signed Chigo Okonkwo and Nick Cross, who probably are the best two signings of free agency. He signed those guys within 5 minutes on the same day. Within 5 minutes. He signed De'Ami Brown and Van Jefferson at the same time on the same day. And those guys have absolutely been impressing this offseason. So Adam Peters hasn't done anything wrong this offseason, besides maybe the Tyler Biadasz thing. He's done everything that he's needed to. And now it's time for this football team to go show out for Adam Peters because he's had a fantastic offseason, and I can't preach about that enough. I can't say that enough. Adam Peters has been masterful on the cap and masterful with who he's added to his football team. He understands now the contract. I didn't even mention this yet, Laramie Tunsil's contract. What was it, like a 2-year, $60 million deal? They got that done on the first day of free agency. They didn't wait till the summer. That was all a concern for us. Whether you want to admit it or not, you were all concerned about Laramie Tunsil's contract. And where are they going to get it done? Was it going to drag out to the summer? Adam Peters got it done on the first day of free agency. He learned from Terry McLaurin's contract saga last year. So Adam Peters has done everything right. And I had to make a video talking about him because he's been perfect this offseason. Keep it up, Adam Peters. And of course, we'll see how all these guys look during the season. But I hope Adam Peters keeps it up. I want to address something else here at the end of this video. And it's hard for me to, sit here and continue to talk about Brandon Aiyuk. But I think I made a decision. And I'll talk more about this if I do have to continue to talk about him. I think I made a decision on Brandon Aiyuk. I'm out. I was out originally on Brandon Aiyuk, and then I was in on Brandon Aiyuk. I'm not scared to say that. I was in on Brandon Aiyuk because I felt like we needed another wide receiver. And while I do still feel like we need another wide receiver, I'm out on Brandon Aiyuk for one reason, because he's messed up in the head. He's mentally messed up. I don't know how his play is going to be on the field, but he's mentally messed up. He posted like 5 or so stories yesterday on Instagram saying that he's the best wide receiver in the world. And he said the Commanders the best team in the world, which I don't have a problem with, obviously. But he said that he's the best wide receiver in the world. Then he posted an Instagram story today of him just throwing money on the ground. And it just kind of brought me to this realization after Kevin Sheehan had said it today. Kevin Sheehan is now out on signing Brandon Aiyuk as well, by the way. He definitely influenced my decision. But it just made me understand, like, something's not right with this guy. And whoever's advising Brandon Aiyuk is not doing a good job. If there is anyone there, I don't want Brandon Aiyuk on my football team. And I think Adam Peters is starting to feel this way as well. Adam Schefter mentioned yesterday that, Brandon Aiyuk posting all these things, it's really hurting him. Teams around the league are starting to feel like I am. Like, what are you doing? He's hurting himself. And it's not a good look whatsoever. I'm out on Aiyuk. It's Stephon Diggs and nothing. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully you enjoyed this different style video. Make sure the like button on the way out. Subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying the content. Your thoughts belong in the comment section below as always as well. Peace out.